Counter Jihad Magazine, the magazine of the Counter Jihad Movement, dedicated to the principles of equality of all people before the law, freedom of speech, and freedom of conscience. For our first issue, we take a look back at the enigmatic New Age cult leader, Eric Allen Bell. That's this time on Counter Jihad Magazine. This is the bounty that Eric Allen Bell used in his appeals for donations during his time among the Counter Jihad Movement in 2012. It was supposed to be for 10 million rupees, but the number 10 million is nowhere to be found. Instead, there's the number 1 quadrillion, twice. If this were 1 quadrillion rupees, then that would convert to over $18 trillion, roughly the amount of the US national debt. Eric continued to exploit the bounty even after he was advised about the number of zeros on the bounty by counter-jihad activist Tommy Hunt. Eric replied that the number of zeros was irrelevant and that publicly discussing the bounty this way was aiding the enemy. This was followed by his piece, Anatomy of a Fatwa, which never mentions Eric's bounty, the number 1 quadrillion, or that there never was a fatwa on Eric Allen Bell at any time. To this date, Eric has not produced a translation of the bounty, and Counter Jihad Magazine is proud to bring this exclusive translation of the EAB bounty, which reads, "None of the death threats that Eric received on Facebook mentions the bounty, and in furtherance of his fraud campaign, Eric Allen Bell used misleading language to imply he was under FBI protection. He never was under FBI protection, although he had received maybe more than 100 death threats on Facebook. He had to gill the lily and lie. And he even did this again, a second time, almost exactly the same language and the same mistake, with the same FBI, safe house, and himself together in the same sentence. I have been moved to a safe house while the FBI investigates numerous death threats against me." When Eric was confronted with the fact that many people had been misled by his language, he said it was their fault if they got the wrong idea. That would be a more convincing explanation if these statements were not made while asking for money, and if there were no other examples of EAB's self-serving and irresponsible talking. Case in point, EAB's fraud campaign continued onto Israel National Radio. Listen here, at 11 minutes in, when Eric says 4 Pakistani newspapers have called for his death.
Who they report to. You know, when I'm asking for protection, and I'm saying, look, 4 Pakistani newspapers have named me as the filmmaker and called for my death, it's alarming to see that
20 seconds later, he says his case is working its way to Eric Holder.
The government is, as my case, makes its way upstairs, maybe to Eric Holder. Eric Holder, who runs the...
Neither one of these statements is true. No Pakistani newspaper called for his death. And if Eric's case ever comes before the AG's office, it will be for fraud. The bounty that was referenced by Eric in his appeals for money is proof of Eric's fraud campaign. Eric was told in early October 2012 that there were too many zeros on the bounty for it to be real. Eric suppressed this information and continued to milk the bounty until nearly a year later, when he finally acknowledged that the number on the bounty was 1 quadrillion and therefore not real. Today, he seems to be telling another story. Eric has found a safe harbor at Ali Sina's faithfreedom.org, and it is from here that he tries to defend his record. While his responses are wholly inadequate, they are nonetheless highly revealing of his propensity for lying. Not even Ali Sina believes the bounty is real. If the bounty is real, then why were we told it was for 10 million rupees? Eric just makes these assertions about things without ever backing them up. Which foreign newspapers? No foreign newspaper has called for his death. Certainly not the ones he cited in his appeals for donations. There is nothing about Eric Allen Bell in the Wikipedia article on the innocence of Muslims. Eric knows very well what the New Age is. He has discussed it at Global One, and in particular, he was asked about what the bleep, Ramtha and Dr. Emoto, and he said he didn't know where this was coming from, despite the fact that these are all things he has in one form or another endorsed at Global One. Well, what about the part that he does agree with? There is still no comment from EAB about the fact that Ramtha is all over this movie. Up until this point, EAB has wholeheartedly endorsed this film. Has he accepted that What the Bleep is an infomercial for Ramtha yet? He did this while engaging in a fraud campaign that included a phony bounty, misleading statements about the FBI, and wild exaggerations on Israel National Radio. That is not what he said. He said the Counter Jihad Movement is a front to advance Christianity, and he has said this repeatedly. He has also said Robert Spencer and Pamela Geller are tools of the religious right. Please take note of the way he uses language and the misleading answers he gives to questions. Robert Spencer did say it. Why wouldn't he? Eric is simply outrageous with his talk of Jewish supremacists controlling America's money. Keep in mind, Robert Spencer made this statement before Eric went off the rails with his Jewish supremacist talk. We all know Eric much better now. He has said the Counter Jihad Movement was a front to advance Christianity, and he wanted no part of it. Why is he still here, pretending like none of this ever happened? He said that Jewish supremacists control America's money, which, by the way, is pretty much how David Duke talks. As I say, Eric is quite outrageous. Why is Eric Allen Bell calling other people mentally unstable? Isn't that a better description of him? As far as Ostrich the Other Red Meat goes, this is a piece of phantasmagorical writing by EAB which blends fantasy with reality. For example, there is an extended interview between EAB and Barbara Walters in Eric's attempt at a tour de force. Any confusion the reader might have here is by design. He wants you to be confused. Eric is taking offense to my pointing out this line here, which indicates that he has a well-established lying problem. Fact or fiction? Well, as Eric Allen Bell might say, you be the judge. None of the death threats that Eric received on Facebook mentions the bounty. Not one. There is no denying that Eric received death threats on Facebook, and that this is a warning to us all. Those of us who are paying attention are sick and tired of Muslims acting like this. But Eric is not an innocent in this affair. For weeks he had been taunting them with his campaign to nuke the Kaaba, calls for the destruction of Islam, calling their women Nazis, having a slogan about napalm, and threatening to make a movie like this. When the inevitable response came, Eric changed roles and went from being a tough guy to playing the victim. After all of that buildup, we were somehow left expecting more. Something more like this.
To this crap. I would encourage all of you out there watching who share my feeling to do something similar, because we have to make a stand right here and right now. We can't wait around 20 years. We can't wait a generation for our kids to fight this war for us. This war is on us right here and right now. Either we make our stand right here or it's over. Okay? You can come after me if you want, boys. You come after me. That's fine. I have no problem laying down my life for my fellow Americans, for my fellow human beings, and for the church. I have no problem with that. Come and get it. We fight the evil in the world, and this crap is evil. My name is Barnhardt. I'm at 9175 Cornbreast Circle, 80124 in Lone Tree, Colorado. Anybody who wants a piece of me is more than welcome to come and get it. Any Muslims who would like to come and get a piece of me. I've had enough of this crap. I'm not going to bow. I am not going to submit to Islam, ever. Ever.
Next time, we take a look at Eric's disastrous encounter with Saba, his deep and secretive connections to the New Age, and why he left the Counter Jihad movement. That's all next time on Counter Jihad Magazine.